So welcome to another video from theplayersaid.com. This one's a bit of a weird one. I am on my way home from WBC 2023, and as you can see, I'm on my own. So I'm just driving home, and normally we make these car videos to pass the time. Last Grant is not with me. Unfortunately, there was some. I don't even know if I'm going to release this. Grant, we arrived at WBC and very quickly Grant was unwell, and so he went home separately. And basically, the long and short of it is he's fine, but he was there for like Tuesday night, and that was pretty much all the gaming we did together. And he basically like missed everything else for the whole time, which was really, really sad. We'll probably talk about that a bit more in our monthly debrief later, and I'll do like a more formal wrap up at least after I have a chat with him when we get home, kind of put heads together with this. But so it's a bit of a not the usual fare is what I'm going to say, because I wanted to make a quick video because unfortunately, Grant missed out, but I had a great time anyway, which sounds awful. But so I wanted to kind of talk about some of my favorite experiences that I had at WBC, and hopefully maybe that'll prompt you guys to think about attending, maybe WBC, or maybe just like get out there and look for local cons, because I guarantee if you reach out to kind of local gamers or get in touch with your local friendly game stores, they will know of people who are doing get-togethers, or you're able to kind of organize those yourself, even if it's small gatherings to get people together to play some of the big games, or spend a lot of, a weekend playing lots of games, all that kind of stuff. Don't feel like you have to live vicariously through people or just kind of miss out on that. Go out, put yourself out there. I know it can be uncomfortable, but like WBC is my favorite week of gaming every year, without question. We have a couple other events we go to that are also extremely good, but there is nothing quite like WBC. World Board Gaming Champions held in sunny Pennsylvania in the middle of a boiling hot summer at a ski lodge, and it's wonderful. They hold a bunch of tournaments and that. But they also just have a massive gaming library that you can use. There's just a ton of open gaming, and it's an excuse to get together, play a bunch of war games, play a bunch of big multiplayer games, and just hang out and see lots of people that are regulars there, kind of see some old friends, and it's a grand old time. So I wanted to mention two of the things that we did, and that was actually with Grant on Tuesday night, because we rushed up here. I was up at 6 a.m., got over to his house, so we launched that 6-hour drive over here pretty early on, stopped for a bit of food and that, but we were here around 2:33, and what that did is that enabled us to sit down and basically have the annual kind of sit down and chat with Greg Smith. Greg's a wonderful friend of ours. He's an absolute mensch, and he always has like billions and billions of prototypes with him. So there's like a full 40-minute kind of sit-down interview that we did with him, where we'll kind of go through some of that. But it's always a highlight of our time there, because effectively we see him once a year, and often he does the first half at WBC and goes home, and we do the second half. So we have that little crossover time, and we make sure that we do that, and got some dinner together afterwards. But it's just always a really enjoyable time, really upbeat, and it's from a gaming standpoint. We didn't really play anything. We walked through his new Rebel Tide. Sometimes we kind of sit and like demo and play stuff, but we just kind of chatted through and walked through stuff. But it's always just fascinating to talk through all of the things he's got in the pipelines, and just the different tweaks or additions to games in his lines in his series, and like where the thinking's going and what the directions. It's always a joy. So that's always something that was grand. Look forward to that. That was a blast. But one of the things that I was really looking forward to is that night, on Tuesday night, we were able to sit down with 4 other people, some good friends of ours, some new players, and finally got to meet Ed Beach. Ed Beach is a designer of Here I Stand and Virgin Queen, couple of favorites. So I had him autograph my Virgin Queen rulebook because I have a problem. And but we sat down and he taught us, and we demoed a game of Border Reavers, and I have a copy, and I've did a shambolic unboxing, which you'll see on the channel at some point. But I was rushing to do that so that we could take it to WBC, and then it turned out that day that, well, we didn't need it. We had his copy. So, I don't know if I might reshoot an unboxing, or you might get the shambolic one. Good luck to you. But there's nothing quite like having the designer of a game verbally teach you his design. And Border Reavers is a really cool game, quite unlike a lot of the stuff that we play. It's really, really neat. It's not quite a dudes on a map game, but it has some elements of that, and you're attacking each other, trying to gain victory points from being the best kind of ruffian, basically stealing people's sheep, or going into battle against the English or against the Scottish, depending on which side of the map you're sitting on, and just attacking everyone on the board, basically. And everyone then is retaliating, and then you get into different feuds, or you capture guys and you go and do jailbreaks. It's an absolute riot of a game. We played it at 6 and it was great. I would play it at 6 again. They recommend you can also do 4. 4's very, very good. I think they said the 4 is really where they place tested it the most, but we played it at 6 and it was great. The more the merrier, frankly. But it's kind of an odd one, you really can't do 5 because of the way that the cards are set up and the board's set up, so it's either 4 or 6. And they have bots for fewer if you want to do it solo, but it was a joy listening to Ed both teach us the game, because that's a rulebook I don't have to learn, which is nice, but when you get it from the designer, you also get the design philosophy behind the mechanics, instead of it just being you play your cards to do this and do that. Okay, cool, I know the rules. You get the layers of the design philosophy, and also the journey of the game of well, this mechanic does this, this, and this. It used to do this and this, but through playtesting we refined it, or we changed it because it was more effective in a different direction. And then also, there's a really nice history book in the box, but hearing it firsthand from him, who's done all that research, who was recently over in the UK, in and around those border areas, visited a lot of the places that are on the map, hearing those tales of his experiences as well, that's part of the reason that I really love going to WBC, is you'll meet so many different people. There's a lot of game designers there as well, and you get those little extra moments that can really elevate a game and kind of really bring it to life. So it's not just a game at that point. You get first-hand experience with all the stuff that goes behind it from both design and research and history. So that was really, really, really fun, and it makes me very excited to play it again, and I hope to organize a big game of that future events and things that we go to as well as a result. So big thanks to Ed for that. That was really, really wonderful. And then most of the rest of the time I sat down, we did a few interviews. It was just kind of on my own, so there's a few of those coming out, and I appreciate everyone's time for that. But a couple of things that were just so wonderful that I wanted to have a chat about were, I finally played John Company. John Company, Grant backed the Kickstarter edition it's been out like a year at least, and it's been sat on a shelf, and everyone says it's amazing, and we just have never got to it. And part of it is we want to have lots of players, and the other part is like it's quite a complicated game, and so just like it hasn't happened yet. But huge shout out to Tim and Will, who taught that and kind of GM'd, player GM'd that game the first night, because I played it on I can't remember the days. It was kind of a whirlwind, but we played it at one of the evenings, and it was so good. I was like, we're immediately playing this again first thing tomorrow morning. So we played it that night and learned the game. So I was getting familiar with the rules, and I think, as is expected, that we tanked the company. It took 3 turns, and we all went down in flames, and it was this joyous experience of watching a train crash, is terrible rolls and greed and corruption run riot, and we all learned a lot from it. So that if we'd have just done just that, it would have been great and it would have been awesome. But it was also, once again, we had really good people teaching the game who knew it really well, and made it a pretty seamless kind of pickup. I was surprised at how easy it was to kind of pick that up after a turn. But it was the journey from this absolute nightmarish disaster of just everything went bleh, and we played it again the next morning, and it was a totally different experience. Couldn't have been more different. We went the whole 5 turns. The company made it the whole way. It was super high highs. It was 3 or 4 turns of raking in incredible amounts of profits, and everyone was retiring and going off to their stately homes, and there was money flowing. There was dividends being paid out, and we had this great kind of flow of the game of saving up a bunch of money and exploiting things, and then paying that all out, and then starting that again, because I feel like, generally speaking, we were being a bit more responsible business owners. But then turn 5 was a stand-up turn. There was yelling, there was screaming, there was just bartering and negotiation, there was great elation with some rolls, there was utter despair at others, there were blackmail cards that were pulled right at the end. That it was so good. It is one of having only played it twice, both times 6 players, that is easily shooting up there to be one of my favorite games of all times. Probably one of my favorite non-war games easily. Because it's everything that I like in a game. It's got lots of different layers of mechanics, but all of those mechanics encourage you to have interplay and negotiation and discussions. Everything you do affects someone, or everything you want to do requires permission from others. And so all the jockeying for positions and the bribery or the favors that you're giving out, all of that stuff is so tantalizingly good. And I also was very grateful for all the players that we played with, because all of those players, whilst many of us hadn't played that before, I think many of those players were very experienced gamers and understood that is the crux of the game. And so there was an unconscionable amount of wheeling and dealing and table talk that I think sometimes in those kinds of games, especially in newer ones, I kind of see it in Coin as well. You have people are a little bit afraid, or they're a bit too conservative with their resources, and so you get maybe a little bit less table talk, and it's a bit more static, and so that you're a bit more at the whim of the dice instead of trying to actually position yourself for success. But everyone was very loose and was very open, and so everything that was going on was so fun to interact with, even though the thesis of that game, what we're doing, is gross. And some of the statements that were made in that game of like just exploiting the Indian subcontinent and the people there is like, oh, it is, that game is the face of colonialism and greed. And playing it, the game itself is a really good experience. But then you like think about it, like, oh, so icky. But that's also part of the reason that I like that game as well, is that it puts you in a position that you would not normally be in, and you get to experience something a little bit different. But yeah, once again, I'm very grateful for the players that we had and the people teaching it, because that game is easily a 10 out of 10. It's so fun. That was a classic game for me. That's not going away. Hopefully I get to meet Cole Worley later on in the year, because I'm taking my PAX Premier rulebook and I'm going to have him autograph those as well. I would love to play that game with him. That'd be bucket list. Good gracious. And I think the last thing that I wanted to mention is, so we did that John Company, and that ended kind of just after lunch, maybe like 1 or 2, and then had some lunch, and then we set up Here I Stand. So John Company and Here I Stand in the same day was an incredible day of gaming. Here I Stand, we had Here I Stand was actually really, really good. We played with 6 players. Myself and Mike, who we do Basement Con with, we've played that a lot. And so, whilst I'm not the most experienced player or any good at that game, I'm experienced enough where we taught the game, and like we're also helped to keep it go along at a good clip, and advise people on the value of doing certain things or not, and maybe things to watch out for. But the 4 other players that we played with, they had all played through one mock turn at some point, so they knew the core, like some of the core mechanics of it, and so it wasn't like totally newbies of like, this is how a CDG works. So that was really nice. So it was a lot of new players, and we played a 5-turn game. We went it was like from like 3 p.m. and I think we ended at like 10:30, and I will never not love that game. And much like John Company, there was stand-up moments, as there always is. There are things from that particular session that were I will never forget, and I think that's why I love Here I Stand so much, is that the memories and the moments that you have in those games are like burned into you. They're unforgettable. Some of the stuff that happened in that game was incredibly funny. Just like the joke in that game is that the MVP of the Reformation was the Pope. No matter what the papacy did in that game, they lost almost every theological debate they held. And so like they'd be playing their cards to hold those, and they were losing every single one, and just like helping the Protestants on their turn, who would then take their own turn and do more. So that stuff was pretty funny. We also I played as the Ottomans, because we did random draw, and that's what I got. And there came a point where all of the Catholic powers needed to be able to focus on the Protestants, who were getting very strong at that point. And the Protestants and the Ottomans, we were both like in the lead, but like I made a deal with the Habsburg player of like, we'll make peace for a turn, and we'll exchange some keys and arrange some stuff so that you can focus on attacking, getting the Protestants in line, basically. And so we'd been at each other's throats, and so we made a white peace, and then I ceded Vienna back to him, and he ceded Athens back to me, because we kind of exchanged those, and he was holding that over my head. And we made that deal, and I hadn't really been paying attention to my cards, because I was like, I had a decent hand, but I was like, man, it's okay. I was actually kind of in trouble, because I had lost a key, and so I only had like 4 cards plus my home card instead of hoping to get 6. I think I was fighting a foreign war as well, so I didn't have a lot, but I hadn't really looked at my cards before we went to negotiations. We were just having a chat, and I was like, hey, we agreed to make peace and exchange these things. And then I sat back down at the table after we declared everything and made some peace, and the game was progressing. And then I kind of looked at my hand and assessed what I had. And in my hand was the Machiavelli card, which allows you to declare war in the middle of the round at no cost. And so I waited till I had that, and then I had one other card, and I waited till as long as I could in the round, and I played that as my penultimate card. So I declared war on him, and because he'd marched everyone out of Vienna, so I declared war on him, spent 2 CPs to lay siege to Vienna, which was vacant, and then on my final card took Vienna off of him again. But it was, and so it was a great story moment. It felt a bit mean-spirited and rude, but that's like part of the joy. And we were all just having a good time. It was like a learning, it wasn't that serious. But it was one of those moments where some of those newer players hadn't seen that was a card in the game and hadn't seen that was possible, and so they got to experience one of those crazy things that can happen in that game, that the more you play it, the more you have to be a bit canny about knowing that that's there. But I also kind of just did it by accident. I was planning on just doing piracy, and then I read what my cards were, and I was like, oh, well, I can't pass that up. And everyone's very good-natured about it, and it was fun. But Here I Stand is always a joy to play, and that was a really fun experience, and it was really cool to play that with new players who are now like, yes, they're definitely going to go on and play that as well. So that was a blast. I played a billion other games, a lot of gaming, bought a bunch of stuff, but I'll talk about that more and have a bit more of a formal debrief. But I think those were some of just my choice highlights and moments. Unfortunately, with Grant not being able to kind of be there for most of the time, we had some succulent plans, and basically those got put off until next time because some of the things we didn't want to do without him, or I wanted to miss out on. So we had planned on doing Savannah 3-player with Mark Mikolos, and Mark desperately wanted to do it with the 2 of us as the French and Patriot alliance, who then have to kind of argue a bit. He wanted to see that, and so I offered to harangue another 3rd player, but we decided we're going to hold that off and do it next time. We'd planned to do a big 6-player Burning Banners with Chris Moeller, but he ended up not being able to attend for personal reasons, so that was a shame, but hopefully everything's fine there as well. And then we'd also planned on doing a tour of Gettysburg, and that was I didn't want to just go and drive 3 hours this morning and do that without him. It would have just been me on my own, basically, and then drive 9 hours home. So again, that'll be something we kind of plan on to do next time we're there. So that was something that was a bit of a shadow over that, where it was we had all this great stuff, and everyone was very gracious about it because everyone was very understanding. So we have a lot more to look forward to next time we go to WBC, but still was able to have a really good time doing some really cool gaming, and the people that we did meet and were able to sit down with as well was really neat. But a lot to look forward to, and it was a total blast. But I'll do a bit more of a formal sit down, something more quiet. We'll go through some of the games that we picked up and a bit more about all the other games that we played and some other different details, and I got some bits and pieces to show off as well. So I'll sit down with those, but I've yapped for long enough. But those are some of my kind of real favorite highlights or things that I really enjoyed that were a bit different. And hopefully that was worth listening to and not too terribly boring, but helps to pass time on my...
reported ahead on I-70 West.
And there's a speed check here in a bit, so I got to slow down. But hopefully that was not too terribly boring. But appreciate everyone for tuning in. Highly recommend WBC. You should go visit. But thanks for watching. I've been Alexander for theplayersaid.com. Oh, Grant's not here. That's real sad. But thanks for watching.